This is one of those just show up episodes. I've done one other episode like this. It was in mid February. And the reason why I know that is because it was the first episode that I did when I got here to Austin, Texas, when I moved here. And that feels like a million years ago. And it's crazy to think that that wasn't even a full year ago. So much has changed. But this is what one of those episodes is: just show up. When I started this podcast, I made the pact to myself, no matter what, there is some type of episode that will be uploaded every single week, every single Wednesday. And that doesn't always have to be some over the top type production or some type of interview, but just getting into that mindset of, hey, I'm showing up every single week, no matter what. And we can romanticize our process so much. We can think that on a daily or weekly basis, there's always going to be, big events or like big inputs or big outputs. But it's all just about, I just got to show up week, because you want to continue that thread. You want to make sure that you're adding another link in the chain. You don't want to break that chain. And I knew that. I was like, all right, really don't have much to talk about here, right? I really don't have anything to unfold. And there are certain stories or certain things that I could share, but I was like, you know what? It feels like I'd be forcing that. And I don't want to force it. I want to, when I want to share a story, be like, oh yeah, like I want to share this. I want to be in that energy of sharing this. And right now I'm in the energy of, I guess to a degree, like, hey, don't necessarily like want to be here or don't necessarily have anything like specific to share, but I'm going to show up. And I guess to a degree, like, it is on me a little that I have to make an episode like this, because if you've watched or listened to most of my episodes, the majority are interviews. And I'm transparent enough to say of like, yeah, like I don't have any interviews in my library to share right now. And I don't have anyone like on the docket, or I don't have as many as I have had in the past. And that simply just comes down to, I haven't been doing as much outreach to people. It's like, all right, want to get people on your podcast? You got to ask people. And I haven't been asking enough people. But I'm okay with that, because I know that's going to change. And the reason why I haven't been asking is because my time has been taken up by a lot of other stuff. And that's all great stuff as well. So I'm just continuing to show up here, though, because that's what you got to do. And it becomes so much easier to show up when you start. Like before you start, showing up doesn't feel easy. It feels really hard, because you're like, oh, it's not so much, there's no such thing as showing up. It's like, oh, I got to start this new thing. But then once you start, it's much easier to get into that mindset of, okay, let me continue to, build off of that starting point. And it's really funny because I was reflecting about, how I got into podcasting, or when I officially was like, all right, like I'm starting this. Because for a really long time, like I first had the idea that I wanted to start a podcast like midway through my senior year of college, where I was like, that's something that I think I'd be really interested in doing, and I think like I'd be pretty good at it. But I knew like the job that I had lined up out of college, I was like, I'm not going to be able to juggle that. And I feel like it would be more of a waste if I feel like already like going into it knowing like, oh, my schedule and like my time and everything just isn't lined up to be able to start something. Because it's true, like when you are starting something from scratch, it's a much different uh, process than when you can just continue to facilitate something once it's already started. And so, the initial seed was planted senior year of college. A few years went by where I was in that first job out of college. And then I left that job and got another one. And I was like, all right, like, I don't want to start it yet because I want to see how things go within this new job. But I think this is, a creative project that uh, I think I'd be able to balance with my full time job as well. And a few months go by within that new job, and I realized, like, okay, like, this is something that I'm going to be able to balance. Like, I'll definitely be able to do my work at this job while also, creating this podcast. And so you're probably thinking, like, oh, okay, like, great. Like, I had the idea or the confirmation of knowing, like, okay, this is something that I can start. So he started it right away. Wrong. It was probably another 6 or 7 months that I actually was like, all right, I'm going to start this podcast. And that was like a shitty 6 or 7 months because, but in the long term, also a very beneficial 6 or 7 months. And I'll explain why. First off, with the shitty part of it, it was shitty because I was like, oh, like, there's this thing that I really want to start and I'm just not doing it. And it's just like eating me up. And I'm like, just, it's not a good feeling. Like, where you just know, like, there's something I want to be doing it and I'm not breaking through that wall and I'm not actually starting it. The reason why that's a good thing, and this goes to something that I've talked about in my last conversation with Josh Chuba. The reason why that's a good thing is because one of my favorite writers is Stephen Pressfield and his whole philosophy on resistance. And his whole philosophy is, if you feel that internal resistance, if you feel that like internal angst or just like that bubbling feeling within you of you not doing something or you not executing on something that you have an idea on, and it gives you that like really crummy feeling, it means there's something there for you. Like, it means that there's something that must be unpacked, or like there's some component of that work that is really going to light you up. Because if you have an idea for something and you don't start it and it doesn't like gnaw at you and you're kind of just like indifferent about it, well, then it probably isn't meant for you. And so it's so funny what actually got me to start the podcast was because I was very, not very, but with select people like my parents and other family members, I'd been talking about like, yeah, like I think I really want to start a podcast. And this was right around like my birthday, Christmas time. And, um, my mom was like, oh, like, what do you want me to get you, for your birthday or for your Christmas? My birthday's in November. Obviously Christmas is in December. So like right around that same time period. And I was like, I don't know, like, like, you don't have to get anything for me. Like, I'm not like, I don't need anything. I'm not interested in anything. She was like, all right, like, fine, but like, let me know. And I remember my my mom was like out for a walk, and I can't remember if this was a long time ago now, but I can't remember if she like texted me or like when she got home from her walk, she was like, I know what I'm gonna get you for your birthday. And I was like, what? She was like, I'm getting you, podcast equipment. I'm gonna get you like a podcast setup. And I was uh like, she was gonna get me like a microphone and a light and maybe like some other stuff. Really is just you really just need a microphone. You don't even you literally don't need anything to start a podcast. You literally just need a computer. But if you want to have like a little bit of a setup so it like sounds good and you look good, just like a microphone and a light. And she was like, I'm gonna get you some podcast stuff. And I remember I was like, no, like, you don't need to. Like, I'm not ready yet. I'm not gonna start it yet. And she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, no, like, you don't need to get me that. And like, you don't need to get me anything." I was like, "All right." She was like, "All right, sounds good." And I remember it literally might have been like 30 to 45 minutes later where I told her, I said, "You know what? No, get me the stuff. Like, get me the equipment." Because I realized if I had that stuff in my room, if I was just staring at a microphone and I wasn't using it, it would eat me up even more. I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you got to put that to use. And so that's what, like, this goes to like James Clear's book, Atomic Habits as well. I remember there was, I think it was like a ballerina dancer of like a story in his book who, like, when she would go um, to practice, or like when she would train and have to go to the gym like really early in the morning, you know, she would dread it. And then, especially like she was living in New York City in the winter, it's just like really, really cold, getting up early, dreading it. And the mindset shift for her wasn't like, okay, not focusing on like, oh, I have to get up really early and I have to go like train and I'm going to be exhausted. The shift was, I just need to get into a taxi cab. Like, once I take that first step, the rest is kind of like just on like autopilot, where I don't need to focus on that other stuff, because once I get into that cab, the rest is just going to take care of itself to a degree. And I'm not joking. That's how this podcast started, where it was like, I just need to buy a microphone. I just need to see a microphone in front of me in my presence, because it got me into the mindset of, all right, I need to put that into use. And then, all right, I need to email one person. I remember when I emailed the first person, saying like, hey, I would love to have you on my podcast. It was a wild feeling. It was just like, whoa, like things just really changed here. Like, I just asked, like I just reached out to somebody. And now, like, if I do that today, it's like nothing. Like, asking somebody to be on my podcast, I've sent out hundreds of emails, hundreds of, messages to people about this podcast, that feels like nothing. I remember sending out the first calendar invite for my first guest. It was like, whoa, this is like crazy. And now it's like, that's absolutely nothing. But that just goes to, it's easy to show up now. I went through that resistance, but now it's just easy to show up. And it's so crazy to think, the reason why I reflected back on that moment, with getting the podcast equipment, is because, so I guess this is like 2 years later now from when I got that initial equipment, where it was just, this $100 microphone, one light. And I asked my mom, or I told my mom, I was like, I want some upgraded equipment for my podcast. Where I was like, I want a better mic, and I want a camera as well, because I'm using my webcam on my computer for the videos. But I was like, no, like, I want to upgrade the quality to this, and I want to be able to use a nicer camera to create a nicer image and an overall nicer product. And it just brought me back to that starting moment, because I realized that, like, to a degree, like, I earned the upgraded equipment, so to speak, because I proved to myself of like, hey, like, you do this, like, you're gonna put this stuff to use now. But it's just such a cool reflection moment, going back to the start, where I was like, hey, like, buying the equipment, like, that's what made you start the podcast. You wanted to start the podcast, and there was so much resistance, and there was like, like, how do I want to do this? And I was like, dude, like, you don't need to worry about that. Just buy the mic. Just buy the mic. And honestly, it felt like once I saw that equipment in front of me, the rest just quickly unfolded after that. Now, this isn't to say that, like, okay, you get into this mindset of like, oh, hey, like, I just need to show up. Like, if I show up, the rest of it will take care of itself. Like, yes, to a degree, I do think that's true, but like, you still have to apply yourself. You still have to put in the work. But there will be a lot of weeks where it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look exciting. Like, nothing about this. Like, I love this work. I love this work. I love podcasting. It lights me up to no end. Nothing about it is like exciting. Like, no, like, you look at like one, piece of it in isolation. Like, none of this work is like exciting work, or like, you know, everything is just so granular. It's not until you put years of work into it that somebody be like, "Oh wow, that's so cool." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, like yeah, it looks cool." Like, talking to like a lot of cool people, but like nothing about it is like actually cool. It's just like a lot of boring work. That's honestly, it's just all boring work. And I do think, and this goes to, I think Stephen Collar talks about this in his book, like, but I do believe there's a correlation by like the more boring and monotonous the process looks, the more exciting or like successful the outcome or the output's going to look. And I think that's a large degree about for why people um, may not see success, is because, or why they're always like changing their process, is because they think like, oh, this doesn't feel like over the top, or this doesn't feel exciting, or this doesn't feel like always like energizing and like big stuff, so it's not going to lead to that type of like big and energizing and exciting output. And it's like, no, it's the exact opposite. It's like, it should feel boring, it should feel repetitive, it should feel monotonous. And it's like, that was the big unlock for me. It started in the gym, and then it just unfolded in all other areas of my life, where it was like, oh, like, be consistent, or like find excitement and passion within the boring stuff, because the boring stuff is what works. And the boring stuff is what, actually creates the strides that you want to see happen. And it's like, oh, well, like, well, how does that happen? Because it's like, oh, it's not just about, the one crack. And this is a line that I actually haven't heard this before. So I think I'm just going to, maybe Abraham Lincoln's got a quote about it, maybe. Um, but, you know, somebody's big break comes from thousands of cracks made every single day. Like, when you see somebody like, oh, like, wow, like, look at his huge break. It's like, well, maybe he was just making thousands of cracks for years on end. And maybe he didn't even like, and a lot of those days you won't see like some type of crack created, but it's just like sticking to the process and knowing like, hey, focus on the inputs. And that's what this episode to a large degree is, where I'm like, this isn't exciting. This is an energizing episode. There's nothing, important or big about this, but I know like this is going to be one of my favorites to look back on. I'm like, look at this. Like, I'm just showing up here. So show up, keep showing up. When you don't want to show up, continue to show up, but you can't show up without starting. Showing up does not exist. I said this earlier, but showing up does not exist if you don't start first. And starting is hard. Trust me. Like I've said, I've felt it with this podcast and with other stuff. Starting is hard. But once you get out of that dead weight position, it's honestly like a snowball effect, where you just get into this rhythm of like knowing like, oh, like, I know how to keep doing this now. So I'm going to end it here. Haven't upgraded my podcast equipment just yet with my new mic, my new camera, but I'm looking forward to it. And I'm hoping that my voice sounds even better, the conversations sound even better, and really excited to continue putting in the work into this craft and seeing how it continues to develop every single day and just making those cracks.